In the endless darkness of space, the SS Horizon drifted silently among the stars. It was a sleek, modern ship designed for exploration, its crew tasked with mapping uncharted regions of the galaxy. Commander Laura Hayes stood on the bridge, her sharp eyes scanning the monitors that surrounded her. She was a calm and steady leader, respected by everyone under her command. Beside her, Lieutenant Ryan Carter sat at the sensor station, his fingers flying over the controls as he monitored the vast emptiness outside. The mission had been routine so far, long hours of quiet punctuated by brief moments of discovery. But today felt different. Something about the silence seemed heavier, almost unnatural, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. Carter frowned at his screen, leaning closer to inspect a faint blip that had just appeared. "Commander," he said, his voice cutting through the stillness, "we're picking up a signal." Laura turned quickly, her curiosity piqued. "What kind of signal?" she asked, moving to stand behind him. "It's weak, but it's definitely artificial," Carter replied. His brow furrowed deeper as he adjusted the settings. "Wait, I think it's human." The bridge fell silent. Everyone knew what that meant. Humanity hadn't ventured this far into space yet, not officially. So how could there be a human-made signal out here? Laura crossed her arms, thinking fast. "Can you trace it?" Carter nodded, already working. "It's coming from a nearby sector, about 3 hours away at full speed." He paused, then added hesitantly, "There's more, Commander." The message is repeating. It says, "Unknown vessel detected. Human origin confirmed. Weapons hot." A chill ran through the room. Those words carried weight, dangerous implications no one wanted to face. Laura straightened, her mind racing. Whoever sent this message wasn't asking for help. They were warning others, or maybe even preparing for battle. She glanced around the bridge, meeting the worried gazes of her crew. Chief Engineer Megan Doyle leaned forward from her station, concern etched on her face. "Do we know who sent it?" she asked. "Not yet," Laura replied, "but we're going to find out." Turning back to Carter, she gave a firm nod. "Set a course for the source. Let's see what we're dealing with." As the ship changed direction, the tension aboard the Horizon grew thicker. Laura tried to keep her expression calm, but inside, she couldn't shake the unease gnawing at her. This part of space was supposed to be empty, untouched by human hands. Yet here they were, chasing a ghostly echo of their own kind. What would they find when they arrived? A lost colony? A rogue expedition? Or something worse? 3 hours passed slowly, each minute stretching longer than the last. Finally, the destination came into view, a derelict ship floating lifelessly near the edge of a dying star system. Its hull was battered and scorched, bearing the scars of countless battles. Laura stared at it through the viewport, her pulse quickening. There was no mistaking its design. It was human-built, though far older than anything currently in use. "Scan it," she ordered. "I want to know everything before we get too close." Carter complied, his fingers dancing across the console. After a moment, he looked up, his expression grim. "It matches the signal. And Commander, there are signs of recent activity inside." Laura's stomach tightened. Recent activity meant someone, or something, might still be alive aboard that wreck. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for whatever lay ahead. "Prepare a boarding party," she said firmly. "We're going in." The crew sprang into action, gathering equipment and suiting up. Laura joined them, knowing she couldn't ask anyone to take risks she wasn't willing to face herself. As they approached the airlock of the mysterious ship, one thought lingered in her mind. Whoever, or whatever, they found inside, nothing good awaited them there. The airlock hissed open, and the boarding party stepped cautiously into the derelict ship. Commander Laura Hayes led the way, her flashlight cutting through the thick darkness. Behind her, Lieutenant Ryan Carter and Chief Engineer Megan Doyle followed closely, their weapons drawn but lowered. The interior was eerily quiet, save for the faint creak of metal as the ship shifted in the void of space. Dust coated every surface, and the walls were scorched with blackened streaks, evidence of some violent past. Laura's boots crunched softly on the debris-littered floor as she moved forward. The air was stale and cold, carrying a metallic tang that made her nose wrinkle. She glanced at Carter, who scanned the area with a handheld device. "Anything?" she whispered. "Not yet," he replied, his voice low. "But the power grid is partially active. Some systems might still be online." Doyle knelt by a nearby console, brushing away layers of grime to reveal faded markings. Her eyes narrowed as she studied them. "This ship, it's old. Really old. Look at these panels. They're from the early days of interstellar travel. This thing shouldn't even be out here." Laura nodded, her unease growing. Whoever had built this vessel had done so centuries ago, long before humanity had mastered faster-than-light travel. Yet here it was, floating in deep space like a ghost from the past. She motioned for the team to keep moving, her flashlight beam sweeping across the corridor ahead. They entered what appeared to be the main control room, its walls lined with cracked screens and broken equipment. In the center of the chamber stood a large, circular table, its surface covered in dust and scattered papers. Laura picked up one of the documents, squinting at the faded text. It was written in an archaic version of English, but she could make out fragments. Words like mission, classified, and prototype. Her pulse quickened. Something big had happened here. Carter moved to another console, his fingers working quickly to bypass the damaged systems. After a moment, the screen flickered to life, displaying a series of corrupted files. He tapped a few keys, isolating one that seemed intact. A grainy video began to play, showing a man in a tattered uniform seated at the same table they now stood around. His face was gaunt, his eyes hollow with exhaustion. "This is Captain Samuel Grant of the SS Odyssey," the man said, his voice trembling. "If anyone finds this log, know that we have failed. Our mission, to test a new weapon capable of unprecedented destruction, has turned against us. The crew discovered the truth about our orders, and chaos erupted. Many are dead. The rest, I don't know where they've gone." Laura exchanged a glance with Doyle, whose expression mirrored her own shock. A weapon. What kind of weapon could drive people to mutiny? Before she could ask, the recording continued. "The weapon. It's more than just destructive. It has capabilities beyond anything we imagined. If it falls into the wrong hands." Grant hesitated, his voice breaking. "Destroy it. Whatever you do, destroy it." The screen went dark, leaving the room in silence once more. Laura let out a slow breath, her mind racing. This changed everything. They weren't just exploring an abandoned ship. They were dealing with a potential threat to the entire galaxy. "We need to find that weapon," she said finally, her tone firm, "and figure out what happened to the crew." Doyle nodded, already inspecting the consoles for clues. "There's a cargo bay listed on the ship's map. Maybe that's where they kept it." As they prepared to leave the control room, Carter froze, his head tilting slightly. "Did you hear that?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Laura raised a hand, signaling for quiet. At first, there was nothing but the hum of the ship's failing systems. Then, faintly, they heard it, a soft scraping sound, like metal dragging against metal. It was coming from deeper within the ship. "Stay alert," Laura ordered, gripping her weapon tighter. "We're not alone here." The realization sent a shiver down her spine. Whoever, or whatever, was aboard this ship, it wasn't friendly. And if they didn't tread carefully, they might end up just like Captain Grant and his doomed crew. The sound of scraping metal echoed faintly in the corridor, growing louder as Laura and her team moved cautiously toward the source. Her heart pounded in her chest, each step feeling heavier than the last. The beam of her flashlight danced across the walls, revealing more scorch marks and signs of a violent struggle. Whoever had been aboard this ship hadn't left peacefully. "This place gives me the creeps," Carter muttered under his breath, his weapon raised and ready. "Feels like we're walking into a trap." Laura shot him a quick glance but didn't respond. She couldn't afford to let fear take hold, not when they were so close to uncovering the truth. Doyle, however, seemed unfazed, her focus entirely on the ship's systems. She tapped at her handheld device, trying to locate the exact position of the cargo bay where the weapon might be stored. "We're almost there," Doyle said finally, pointing down the hallway, just around the next corner. As they rounded the bend, the scraping noise stopped abruptly. The sudden silence was deafening, pressing down on them like a weight. Laura held up a fist, signaling for the group to halt. She scanned the area ahead, her flashlight revealing a large door at the end of the corridor. It was partially open, its edges warped and blackened, as if it had been forced open by brute strength. "Stay sharp," Laura whispered, stepping forward. "We don't know what's waiting for us inside." The team approached the door slowly, their weapons trained on the gap. Laura pushed it open further with her boot, peering into the dimly lit room beyond. What she saw made her stomach churn. The cargo bay was a mess, crates overturned, tools scattered everywhere, and strange symbols carved into the walls. In the center of the room stood a massive cylindrical object covered by a tarp. It hummed faintly, vibrating with an energy that seemed almost alive. "That's it," Carter said, his voice tinged with awe and dread. "That's the weapon." Doyle stepped closer, inspecting the device with a mix of curiosity and caution. "It's still active," she murmured, running her fingers over the control panel embedded in its side. Whoever abandoned this ship didn't have time to shut it down completely. Laura frowned, her gaze fixed on the ominous machine. "Can you disable it?" "I can try," Doyle replied, already pulling out her toolkit. "But I'll need some time. This tech is way beyond anything I've seen before." As Doyle got to work, Laura and Carter kept watch, their eyes darting between the shadows in the corners of the room. The air felt heavier here, charged with an unsettling energy. Carter shifted uncomfortably, his grip tightening on his weapon. "Something doesn't feel right," he said quietly, "like we're being watched." Before Laura could respond, a low groan reverberated through the room. It wasn't mechanical, it was human, or at least it sounded human. The three of them froze, searching for the source of the noise. Then, from behind a pile of crates, a figure stumbled into view. It was a man, his face gaunt and pale, his clothes torn and bloodied. He looked like he hadn't eaten or slept in days. His hollow eyes locked onto Laura, and he raised a shaky hand toward her. "You shouldn't be here," he rasped, his voice barely audible. Laura lowered her weapon slightly, taking a cautious step forward. "Who are you?" she asked. "What happened to your crew?" The man shook his head, his body swaying unsteadily. "They're gone," he whispered. "All of them. The weapon, it changed things, made us see things, do things." He clutched his head, his breathing ragged. "I'm the only one left. And now, it's too late." "Too late for what?" Laura pressed, her voice firm but gentle. The man didn't answer. Instead, he pointed a trembling finger at the weapon. "Don't let it wake up," he pleaded. "If it wakes, everything ends." Before Laura could ask more, the man collapsed to the floor, unconscious. Carter rushed to his side, checking for a pulse. "He's alive," he said after a moment, "but barely. We need to get him back to the horizon." Laura nodded, though her mind was racing. The man's words weighed heavily on her. What did he mean by wake up? And how much time did they have before whatever nightmare he warned about became reality? "Keep working on the weapon," she told Doyle, her voice steady despite the storm of questions swirling in her head. "We can't leave until we understand what we're dealing with." Doyle nodded, her hands moving quickly over the controls. But as she worked, the faint hum of the weapon grew louder, pulsing in rhythm with the beating of Laura's heart. Whatever this thing was, it wasn't just a tool of destruction. It was alive, and it knew they were there. As Chief Engineer Megan Doyle worked feverishly to disable the weapon, the hum in the cargo bay grew louder, almost vibrating through the floor. Laura Hayes stood nearby, her eyes darting between the ominous machine and the unconscious man lying on the ground. Lieutenant Ryan Carter knelt beside the stranger, checking his vitals again. The man's breathing was shallow, his skin clammy and cold. Whoever he was, he had clearly been through something horrific. "Doyle," Laura said, her voice tense. "How much longer?" "I'm trying," Doyle snapped, her frustration evident. She wiped sweat from her brow with the back of her hand. "This thing is like nothing I've ever seen. It's not just a weapon. It's alive. Every time I think I've got it under control, it fights back." Laura frowned, glancing at the weapon again. Its surface shimmered faintly, as if reacting to their presence. The symbols carved into the walls around them seemed to glow dimly now, pulsing in sync with the hum. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were running out of time. Suddenly, an alarm blared throughout the derelict ship, sharp and piercing. Lights flickered overhead, casting eerie shadows across the room. Carter jumped to his feet, his weapon raised. "What was that?" he demanded. "It's coming from outside," Laura replied, already moving toward the door. She peered out into the corridor, her flashlight beam sweeping the darkness. At first, there was nothing. But then she saw it. A ship, sleek and menacing, was docking with the derelict vessel. Its hull bore no identifying marks, but its design screamed danger. "They're here," Laura muttered, turning back to the others. "Someone else has found us." Doyle cursed under her breath, her hand still flying over the weapon's controls. "I'm not done yet. If they get their hands on this thing." "We won't let that happen," Laura interrupted firmly. She turned to Carter. "Go back to the airlock. See if you can delay them. I'll stay here with Doyle." Carter hesitated, torn between following orders and staying to protect the group. Finally, he nodded. "Be careful," he said before disappearing down the hallway. Laura moved closer to Doyle, watching as the engineer worked. "Who do you think they are?" she asked quietly. "No idea," Doyle replied without looking up. "But whoever they are, they didn't come all this way for sightseeing." The sound of boots clanging against metal echoed faintly in the distance. They were inside the ship now, moving quickly. Laura gripped her weapon tighter, her mind racing. There wasn't much time left. Just then, the weapon let out a low whine, and one of the panels on its side slid open, revealing a tangle of wires and glowing circuits. Doyle's eyes lit up with determination. "Got it," she exclaimed. "If I cut this line, it should shut the whole thing down." "Then do it," Laura urged, keeping her focus on the doorway. Doyle reached for her cutting tool, but before she could act, a voice crackled over the ship's intercom system. It was deep and commanding, laced with menace. "Attention, intruders. This is Captain Eric Dawson of the Eclipse. Surrender the derelict vessel and its contents immediately, or face the consequences." Laura clenched her jaw. Dawson. She'd heard rumors about him. A ruthless privateer who scavenged ancient tech and sold it to the highest bidder. If he got his hands on the weapon, the galaxy would be in grave danger. "We're not giving him anything," Doyle muttered, her hands trembling slightly as she prepared to sever the wire. "Too late for negotiations," Laura agreed, raising her weapon as footsteps drew nearer. "Just finish it." Doyle took a deep breath and sliced through the wire. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the weapon let out a deafening screech, its surface flashing brightly. The lights in the cargo bay surged, and the entire ship shuddered violently. "What did you do?" Laura shouted, bracing herself against the wall. "I don't know," Doyle yelled back, panic creeping into her voice. "It's not shutting down, it's activating." The glowing symbols on the walls flared brighter, and the air grew thick with static electricity. Laura grabbed Doyle's arm, pulling her toward the exit. "We need to get out of here. Now." As they ran into the corridor, they nearly collided with Carter, who looked pale and shaken. "They're everywhere," he panted. "Dawson's men. They've breached the ship." Laura cursed under her breath, her mind racing. They were trapped between an unknown enemy and a weapon that was spiraling out of control. Whatever happened next, one thing was certain. None of them would leave this place unscathed. The corridor was chaos. The derelict ship groaned under the strain of the weapon's activation, its metal walls vibrating violently as if it might tear itself apart. Laura Hayes led the way, her flashlight beam bouncing wildly as she sprinted toward the airlock. Behind her, Megan Doyle and Ryan Carter followed closely, their faces pale with fear. The sound of Dawson's men echoed through the halls, boots clanging against the metal floors, voices shouting orders. "We're not going to make it," Carter gasped, glancing over his shoulder. "They're right behind us." Laura didn't respond. Her mind was racing, trying to piece together a plan. They couldn't fight Dawson's crew, not outnumbered and trapped in this crumbling ship, but they also couldn't let him get his hands on the weapon. If he managed to control it, the consequences would be catastrophic. "Doyle," Laura said sharply, "can you rig something to slow them down?" Doyle nodded, already pulling tools from her belt. "I can set up an overload in the power grid. It'll knock out the lights and fry some of their gear, but it won't stop them for long." "Do it," Laura ordered. "We need every second we can get." Doyle dropped to one knee, working quickly at a nearby panel. Sparks flew as she rewired the system, her hands moving with practiced precision. Meanwhile, Carter kept watch, his weapon raised and ready. The sound of approaching footsteps grew louder, echoing ominously in the narrow hallway. "They're close," Carter warned, his voice tight with urgency. "I'm almost done," Doyle shouted back, her fingers flying faster. With a final twist of a wire, she slammed the panel shut. "That should buy us a minute." As soon as she finished, the lights flickered and died, plunging the corridor into darkness. A moment later, there was a loud pop followed by angry shouts from Dawson's men. Laura didn't waste any time. "Move," she barked, leading the group forward. The team stumbled through the blackened halls, guided only by the dim glow of their flashlights. The ship continued to shudder around them, the weapon's hum growing louder and more erratic. Laura could feel it in her chest, a deep, resonant vibration that made it hard to think clearly. Whatever the weapon was doing, it wasn't just affecting the ship. It felt like it was reaching out, probing the minds of everyone aboard. Finally, they reached the airlock. Laura punched the release button, but nothing happened. She tried again, slamming her fist against the controls in frustration. "It's locked," she growled. Carter stepped forward, inspecting the mechanism. "Dawson's men must have overridden it remotely. We're stuck here unless we can bypass it." "Then bypass it," Laura snapped, her patience wearing thin. Carter nodded and crouched down, prying open the access panel. His hands trembled slightly as he worked, the pressure of the situation getting to him. Doyle leaned against the wall, clutching her toolkit tightly. Her face was pale, beads of sweat forming on her forehead. "Commander," she said quietly, "the weapon. I don't think we stopped it. I think we woke it up." Laura turned to her, dread sinking into her stomach. "What do you mean?" "I mean," Doyle hesitated, her voice barely above a whisper. "When I cut that wire, I thought I was shutting it down. But now, I think I triggered something bigger, something we can't undo." Before Laura could respond, a deafening roar filled the air, shaking the entire ship. The walls buckled inward, and the floor tilted sharply, throwing them off balance. Laura grabbed onto a railing, her heart pounding. "Carter, hurry," she yelled over the noise. "I'm trying," he shouted back, his fingers trembling as he worked. Finally, with a sharp click, the airlock hissed open. Fresh air rushed in from the SS horizon, a welcome relief after the oppressive atmosphere of the derelict ship. But before they could escape, a figure appeared in the doorway. Tall, imposing, and armed to the teeth. It was Captain Eric Dawson himself, his cold eyes scanning the group. He smirked, raising his weapon. "You've caused quite a bit of trouble," he said, his voice dripping with menace. "Now hand over the weapon, or die where you stand." Laura tightened her grip on her own weapon, her mind racing. Surrender wasn't an option, but fighting Dawson head-on would mean certain death. They were out of time, and out of options. Laura Hayes stared down the barrel of Captain Eric Dawson's weapon, her mind racing. The airlock behind him was their only way out, but Dawson blocked it with an arrogance that made her blood boil. His smirk widened as he took a step closer, his men fanning out behind him, their weapons trained on the small group. "You're in no position to bargain," Dawson said, his voice cold and mocking. "Tell me where the weapon is, or I'll take it from your corpses." Carter shifted slightly, his finger tightening on the trigger of his weapon. Laura shot him a quick glance, silently warning him not to act rashly. They were outnumbered and outgunned. Firing now would only get them killed. She needed another way. "We don't have it," Laura lied, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. "It's still on the ship, locked down." Dawson raised an eyebrow, clearly unconvinced. "You expect me to believe that? After all this trouble?" He gestured to the chaos around them, the flickering lights, the groaning metal, the faint hum of the weapon pulsing through the walls. "You've been messing with forces you don't understand. Hand it over, or watch your friends die." Before Laura could respond, Megan Doyle stepped forward, her face pale but determined. "If we give it to you, you'll destroy everything," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "That thing isn't just a weapon. It's dangerous. It's unstable. You can't control it." Dawson chuckled, shaking his head. "I don't need a lecture from a mechanic. My buyers will figure it out, and they'll pay handsomely for it." His smirk faded, replaced by a look of pure menace. Last chance. Laura's mind raced. She couldn't let Dawson win, but fighting wasn't an option. Then she remembered something. Doyle had rigged part of the derelict ship's systems earlier. If they could trigger another overload, maybe they could buy enough time to escape. "Do it," Laura whispered under her breath, hoping Doyle understood. Doyle hesitated for a split second before nodding almost imperceptibly. Without warning, she lunged toward a nearby console, slamming her fist against a blinking red button. Instantly, the lights went out once more, plunging the corridor into darkness. A loud crackling noise erupted as sparks flew from the ceiling, followed by angry shouts from Dawson's men. "What did you do?" Dawson roared, firing blindly into the shadows. "Now," Laura shouted, grabbing Carter and pulling him toward the airlock. Doyle followed close behind, her flashlight cutting through the chaos. The team sprinted onto the SS Horizon. The hatch ceiling shut behind them just as Dawson's men reached the threshold. On the other side of the door, Dawson's furious voice echoed through the comms. "You think this stops me? I'll tear your ship apart." Laura ignored him, rushing to the bridge. "Get us out of here," she ordered, dropping into the captain's chair. Her crew sprang into action, powering up the engines and plotting a course away from the derelict ship. As the Horizon pulled away, the weapon's hum grew louder, resonating through space like a living thing. Through the viewport, they watched as the derelict vessel began to glow. An eerie, pulsating light that seemed to warp the fabric of reality itself. The stars around it twisted and bent, creating a swirling vortex of energy. "It's collapsing," Carter muttered, his voice filled with awe and dread. "Whatever that thing is, it's tearing itself apart." Laura clenched her fists, her heart heavy with the weight of what they'd left behind. The weapon was gone, but so was any chance of understanding it fully. All they could do now was hope they'd stop Dawson from claiming it. But as the Horizon sped away, Laura couldn't shake the feeling that they hadn't seen the last of the weapon or its power. The SS Horizon raced through the void of space, its engines roaring as it put distance between itself and the derelict ship. On the bridge, Commander Laura Hayes stared out the viewport, her eyes fixed on the swirling vortex left in their wake. The weapon's energy had grown brighter and more unstable, warping the stars around it into a chaotic dance of light and shadow. It was as if the universe itself was unraveling at that single point. "Is it?" Gone. Ryan Carter asked quietly, breaking the tense silence. His hands hovered over the controls, ready to act if anything went wrong. I don't know, Laura admitted, her voice heavy with uncertainty. She turned to Megan Doyle, who sat at a nearby console, analyzing the data streaming in from their sensors. Doyle, what are we looking at? Doyle shook her head, her brow furrowed in concentration. It's hard to say. Whatever that thing is, it's rewriting the rules of physics. The readings don't make sense. It's like it's creating its own reality. Before anyone could respond, a blinding flash erupted from the vortex, illuminating the entire bridge. The crew shielded their eyes instinctively, and for a moment, everything seemed frozen. The ship, the stars, even time itself. Then, just as suddenly as it appeared, the light faded, leaving only an empty void where the derelict ship had once been. It's done, Doyle whispered, her voice barely audible. Whatever that weapon was, it's destroyed itself. Laura let out a slow breath, her shoulders sagging with relief, but only for a moment. Something about the event didn't sit right with her. The weapon hadn't just disappeared. It had left behind a strange residue, a faint ripple in space-time that their sensors struggled to explain. Was it truly gone, or had it simply moved somewhere else? We need to report this, she said finally, standing up straighter. Earth Command needs to know what happened here. If Dawson or anyone else tries to find something like that again, we have to stop them. Carter nodded, though his expression remained troubled. You really think they'll listen? Governments aren't exactly known for being careful when weapons are involved. They'll have to, Laura replied firmly. This isn't just about power. It's about survival. That thing wasn't meant to exist. As the discussion continued, a soft chime sounded from the communications panel. Everyone froze, turning toward the source of the noise. Lieutenant Harper, who had stayed behind to monitor the comms, hesitated before speaking. Commander, we're receiving a transmission. From who? Laura demanded, stepping closer. Harper glanced up, his face pale. It's Captain Dawson. A cold knot formed in Laura's stomach. Patch it through. The screen flickered to life, revealing Dawson's face. He looked furious, his usual arrogance replaced by raw anger. Behind him, the interior of his ship, the Eclipse, was dark and damaged, evidence of the chaos caused by the weapon's destruction. You think you've won. Dawson spat, his voice dripping with venom. You've made a big mistake, Hayes. I may not have the weapon, but I know what it can do. And I'll find another way to get it. Laura met his glare without flinching. You'll never touch it. Not while I'm still breathing. Dawson sneered, leaning closer to the camera. Then you'd better watch your back, Commander. Because next time, I won't be so forgiving. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the bridge in silence. Laura clenched her fists, her mind racing. Dawson was dangerous, but now he was also desperate, and desperate people were unpredictable. She couldn't let him disappear into the shadows, free to chase after another weapon like the one they'd just destroyed. We need to track him, she said finally, turning to her crew. If he finds another lead, another prototype, we have to stop him before it's too late. Doyle frowned, looking up from her console. But how? We barely escaped last time. What happens if he comes back stronger? Laura took a deep breath, steeling herself. Then we'll be ready. This isn't over, not by a long shot. For now, the immediate threat was gone, but Laura knew all too well that peace in the galaxy was fragile, and the scars left by the weapon would linger far longer than anyone realized. The SS Horizon drifted silently through space, its crew working tirelessly to repair the damage sustained during their encounter with Captain Dawson and the derelict ship. Though they had escaped, the battle had left its mark, both on the vessel and on the people aboard. Laura Hayes stood on the bridge, staring out at the stars as if searching for answers in their distant glow. Her mind replayed the events of the past hours, the weapon's destruction, Dawson's threat, and the lingering unease that refused to fade. Commander, Megan Doyle said, breaking the silence. She approached Laura with a data pad in hand, her expression grim. "I've been analyzing the readings from the weapon's collapse. Something strange is happening." Laura turned to face her, her brow furrowing. "Strange how?" Doyle hesitated, glancing at the data again before speaking. The weapon didn't just destroy itself, it left behind some kind of energy signature. It's faint, but it's spreading, almost like ripples in a pond. "What does that mean?" Ryan Carter asked, joining the conversation. He leaned against the console, his arms crossed. "It means..." Doyle paused, choosing her words carefully. "It means the weapon might not be completely gone. Whatever it wasn't just a machine. It was alive. And now, pieces of it could still be out there." Laura felt a chill run down her spine. If Doyle was right, then destroying the weapon hadn't ended the threat. It had only scattered it. "Can we track it?" she asked. "We're trying," Doyle replied. "But it's complicated. The energy signature keeps shifting, almost as if it's adapting. It's like nothing I've ever seen before." Before Laura could respond, an alarm blared across the ship. The crew scrambled to their stations, their movements quick and precise. Harper, seated at the communications panel, called out urgently, "Commander, we got incoming ships." Laura moved to the viewport, her heart pounding. In the distance, a fleet of vessels emerged from the darkness, their designs unfamiliar but unmistakably hostile. They surrounded the horizon, cutting off any chance of escape. "Who are they?" Carter asked, his voice tense. "I don't know," Laura admitted, her eyes narrowing as she studied the ships. Their hulls were jagged and dark, giving them the appearance of predators stalking their prey. "But they're not here for a friendly chat." One of the ships sent a transmission, and moments later, a figure appeared on the main screen. Unlike Dawson, this person wore a mask that obscured their face, their voice distorted by a mechanical filter. "You carry fragments of the entity," they said, their tone cold and devoid of emotion. "Surrender them, or be destroyed." Laura exchanged a glance with Doyle, who looked equally confused. "What entity?" Laura demanded. "We don't have anything." The masked figure tilted their head slightly, as if considering her response. "Do not lie. The entity has marked you. We will take what belongs to us." Before Laura could reply, the ships opened fire. Bright beams of energy slammed into the horizon's shields, shaking the entire vessel. Alarms screamed throughout the ship as the crew scrambled to respond. "Shields at 60%, Harper shouted, his hands flying over the controls. "Return fire," Laura ordered, gripping the edge of the console. "Target their weapons systems." Carter manned the weapons station, firing back at the attackers with precision. Explosions lit up the void as the two sides clashed, each volley bringing them closer to disaster. Despite their efforts, the enemy ships seemed relentless, their attacks coordinated and precise. "We can't hold them off forever," Carter warned, his voice strained. "They're too many." Laura clenched her fists, her mind racing. They needed a plan, and fast. Then it hit her. "Doyle, can you use the energy signature to create a diversion?" Doyle blinked, caught off guard by the question. "Maybe, but it'll take time." "We don't have time," Carter snapped, dodging another barrage of enemy fire. "Yes, we do," Laura said firmly. "Harper, keep those shields up. Carter, buy us as much time as you can. Doyle, get to work." As the battle raged on, Doyle retreated to the engineering bay, her hands trembling as she worked to manipulate the weapon's residual energy. Laura stayed on the bridge, her gaze fixed on the chaos outside. Whatever these attackers wanted, they weren't going to leave empty-handed. The battle raged on, the SS Horizon caught in a deadly game of cat and mouse against the mysterious fleet. Laura Hayes stood firm on the bridge, her eyes locked onto the viewport as beams of energy crisscrossed the void, lighting up the darkness like fireworks. The ship shuddered violently with each hit, its shields weakening under the relentless assault. Harper's voice rang out above the chaos. "Shields at 40%. We can't take much more of this. Keep firing." Laura shouted, her voice cutting through the noise. She turned to Carter, who was manning the weapons console. "Target their engines. If we can disable even one of them, it'll give us a chance." Carter nodded, his hands moving quickly over the controls. A barrage of shots erupted from the horizon, striking one of the enemy ships square in its propulsion system. The vessel exploded in a brilliant flash, debris scattering into the void. But the victory was short-lived. The remaining ships closed in tighter, their attacks growing more aggressive. In the engineering bay, Megan Doyle worked frantically to harness the weapon's residual energy. Her fingers flew across the console, rerouting power and recalibrating systems. Sweat dripped down her face as she muttered to herself, her focus unbroken. "Come on, just a little more." Back on the bridge, Laura clenched her fists, her mind racing. They were running out of options and time. "Doyle, how much longer?" she demanded over the comms. "I'm almost there," Doyle replied, her voice strained but determined. "Just hold them off for a few more minutes." "We're trying." Carter shot back, dodging another volley of enemy fire. The horizon groaned under the strain, sparks flying from damaged panels. "But they're not letting up." Laura gritted her teeth, scanning the battlefield for any advantage. Then she noticed something, the gap forming between two of the enemy ships. It was small, but it might be enough. "Harper, plot a course through that opening," she ordered. "We need to break free long enough for Doyle to finish." Harper hesitated, his hands hovering over the controls. "Commander, if we move now, we'll expose our flank. They'll tear us apart." "We don't have a choice," Laura said firmly. "Trust me." With a deep breath, Harper input the coordinates and engaged the thrusters. The horizon surged forward, narrowly avoiding a direct hit as it slipped through the gap. The maneuver caught the enemy off guard, giving Carter a clear shot at another ship. He didn't hesitate, firing a concentrated blast that crippled its weapons array. "Got one," Carter exclaimed, a flicker of hope in his voice. But the reprieve was brief. The remaining ships regrouped, their formations tightening as they prepared for another wave of attacks. Laura's heart sank. Even with their best efforts, they couldn't hold out forever. Suddenly, Doyle's voice crackled over the comms. "I did it. Activating the diversion now." A burst of energy erupted from the horizon, spreading outward in a dazzling pulse. The weapon's residual signature had been amplified, creating a massive distortion in space-time. The enemy ships faltered, their systems disrupted by the interference. One by one, they began to retreat, pulling back into the shadows of space. "What just happened?" Carter asked, staring at the viewport in disbelief. "It worked," Doyle said, her voice tinged with exhaustion. "The energy signature confused their sensors. They think we're gone, or worse." Laura let out a slow breath, her body sagging with relief. For now, they were safe, but she knew it wouldn't last. The weapon's influence lingered, a ghost in the stars that refused to fade. And somewhere out there, Captain Dawson and others like him would continue their hunt. "Set a course for Earth," Laura ordered, her voice steady despite the weight of everything they'd faced. "We need to warn them. This isn't over." The SS Horizon arrived at Earth weeks later, its battered hull a testament to the battles it had fought and barely survived. Commander Laura Hayes stood on the bridge as the planet came into view, its blue oceans and swirling clouds a stark contrast to the cold emptiness of space. For the first time in what felt like forever, she allowed herself a moment of quiet reflection. The mission had cost them dearly, not just in terms of resources, but in lives and peace of mind. Yet here they were, bringing back a warning that could change humanity's future. As the ship docked, Laura gathered her crew for a final briefing. Megan Doyle sat with dark circles under her eyes, still haunted by the weapon's lingering presence. Ryan Carter leaned against the wall, his usual confidence replaced by a somber determination. Even Lieutenant Harper seemed quieter, the weight of their journey etched into his face. "We did everything we could," Laura began, her voice steady but soft. "We stopped the weapon, or at least we slowed it down. But this isn't over. Dawson is still out there, and so are others who would risk everything to control something they don't understand." Carter nodded grimly. "Do you think Earth Command will listen? Governments aren't exactly known for playing it safe when power is involved." "They'll have to," Laura replied firmly. "If we don't act now, someone else will find another artifact like that weapon. And next time, we might not be so lucky." The crew disembarked, stepping onto Earth's soil with heavy hearts. They were greeted by officials who listened intently as Laura recounted their story. The derelict ship, the weapon's destructive potential, and the fleet that had pursued them. At first, skepticism hung thick in the air, but the data Doyle had collected left no room for doubt. Humanity wasn't ready for such power, and using it would only invite disaster. In the days that followed, Earth Command issued an unprecedented directive. All research into ancient weapons or artifacts was to cease immediately. Teams were assembled to monitor space for signs of similar threats, and efforts were made to locate Captain Dawson and dismantle his operations. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was a start. Laura watched as the galaxy shifted around her, nations coming together in ways she hadn't thought possible. Yet even amidst the progress, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was still out there, watching, waiting. The weapon's energy signature had faded, but not disappeared. Its ripples continued to echo through space, a reminder of how close they'd come to catastrophe. One evening, Laura found herself standing alone on a hill overlooking the city. The stars above twinkled faintly, their light carrying secrets older than time itself. She thought about the crew she'd led, the sacrifices they'd made, and the unknown dangers that still lurked beyond the horizon. Humanity had been given a second chance, but whether they'd use it wisely remained to be seen. A soft breeze brushed past her, carrying with it a sense of calm she hadn't felt in months. For now, Earth was safe. For now, the galaxy held its breath. And for now, Laura allowed herself to hope that maybe, just maybe, they'd learned enough to avoid repeating the mistakes of the past. Far away, in the depths of space, a faint pulse flickered, a whisper of the weapon's power, drifting silently among the stars. It was small, almost imperceptible, but it was there, waiting.